good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is October 19th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful Central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State, and we're still sort of enjoying the end of our Indian summer. It is well past the middle of October, and we haven't had any major heating days yet, which, knock on wood, I'm hoping that holds off because we still don't have our new furnace in yet, although I am going to be ordering like a small pickup truck load, or not a small pickup, a small dump truck load of firewood, just to fire up the wood stove until we get the new propane furnace installed and running in the house, which could be the end of October here. So fear not, we do have a heat source. My outdoor wood stove has not sold yet, so we still have that. As a matter of fact, if it's running when someone comes here to look at it, I think more the better. They can see it's actually working. A couple of notes here. I don't know. I see welcome Lion003 over at Blog Talk Radio in the chat room. I've been putting this out on a daily basis until everything is settled over on the DanClementsShow.com show notes page. For those that don't know, I will be canceling my subscription with Blog Talk Radio and moving the podcast over to the DanClementsShow.com. And I don't know yet. I have an email out and they haven't got back to me yet. I don't know yet if I'll be able to do a podcast live off of that or not. I know it's a site that I can actually download, and they're gonna grab my archives off of Blog Talk Radio, and I can upload daily shows to those. I'm still finding out if there's a way I can do a live podcast off my page. So that may be coming sooner in the future. But the main reason is, for those folks that maybe missed this announcement, is a couple things. Blog Talk Radio has been messing around with their analytics, and I don't think they're being truthful with us. And two, just the cost of keeping up Blog Talk Radio. It is $40 a month for me, and without a job and other income, which I'm not making anything off Blog Talk Radio or enough, making a little bit, but not enough to cover the monthly costs. I need to cut back on some costs, and I'm consolidating. Hopefully the consolidation will make it easier for folks to actually see the show notes page, listen to the podcast, and hopefully maybe, like I said, I might be able to broadcast live over my webpage. We're still checking. There's some plugins that I might be able to use, but it depends on if they're going to cost me anything or not. So I don't know yet. We're still working on that. However, I will be still broadcasting on YouTube. I'll still be doing a live show from noon to 1 Monday through Thursday, and noon to 1:30 on Friday. Although, just a show note tomorrow, since we're going to have F.H. Buckley, columnist from the New York Post, on the show on a Skype call tomorrow, video Skype call tomorrow. I'm actually expanding the show out to 2 hours, just in case we go long with Mr. Buckley. And we're going to be talking about how Donald Trump doing some of the things he's doing with his executive orders and actually taking away or nullifying some of President Obama's executive orders is actually bringing the country back closer to a constitutional republic like it's supposed to be. We got a long way to go, folks. I'm not saying that Trump's ever going to get us there, but we have a long way to go. But it's a step in the right direction. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So it's a step in the right direction. It's amazing to me how we have a federal judge out in Hawaii that is able to hold up lawful, non-legislative executive orders when, and again, this is checks and balances on the federal government. I don't want to get into this too much, but he is a federal district judge. He's not even on the appellate courts. And the Supreme Court had ruled that part of that, his old executive order, was constitutional and was going to vacate any lower court rulings. But why that didn't happen is because they had a certain time limit on the executive order and it ran out. Now, a few days ago, last week, President, I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday, President Trump signed a new executive order identical to the old one, and the Hawaiian judge, the same one that put an injunction against his first one, has put an injunction against this one, and the administration is asking for an expedited hearing to the Supreme Court and skip the appellate process, because it's the same executive order, just, you know, the dates have changed. So they're asking for an expedited hearing at the Supreme Court, which all the indications I've been seeing, they're going to get it. They're going to get that, and the Supreme Court's going to hear that. And again, as I went through back in March, and as I went through this last one, he's not legislating anything. He's directing the departments that are under the auspices or under the president's control to enforce these laws that are already on the books. The judge didn't do anything to set aside these laws. He just stopped the executive order from enforcing laws that are already on the books. So I'm like, I don't understand how that works. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't understand how that works. So that's something that hopefully the Supreme Court will flesh out here. And like I said, all indications was that the Supreme Court was going to vacate any lower court rulings and okay the executive order. But, you know, that could change too. However, the difference now is Gorsuch is on the court now. So, like I said, that everything remains to be seen. Okay, today we're going to talk about free speech. And I titled the show, Free Speech Not Allowed. And if you've been following the show the past few days, on Tuesday I talked about identity politics and how that's tearing the country apart. Yesterday I talked about freedom or justice and liberty in the light of intersectional feminism. Now, if your brain just stopped on you, I'll give you a couple seconds to reboot it and get it started again, because intersectional is a big word. Intersectional feminism is a bigger word, and it is very subjective. And we talked about this yesterday. If you want to listen to the show and look over some of my show notes yesterday, it's episode 908 over at the show notes page. But we talked about it from this aspect of justice and liberty for all. And I've been in conversation since Tuesday with folks on different websites, especially the feminist websites. One is operated by Dr. Christy Winters on YouTube. I've watched her videos. I've listened to what she says about supporting this idea of intersectionality or intersectional feminism. And if you're on YouTube, I just put a graphic up on the screen that talks about, basically, it talks about this concept. And basically what it is you take an individual and you divide that individual up into, quote unquote, their component parts: occupation, education, race, ethnicity, religion, language, heritage, history, immigration status, gender, family status, income, and this, I got to find out how to pronounce this word correctly. Aboriginality. I believe that's how you pronounce it, like an aborigine, which means Native American. And we've talked about this on the show before. I'm fourth generation born here in the States. I have no other ties except for ancestry, but I think 4 generations is more than enough to... I'm just an American. I don't hyphenate my name. I don't say I'm English American or an Irish American. I'm just a plain American, even though I have that Irish and English in my ancestry. And talk about ability, geographic location, age, sexuality. And this is just a small chart. I've seen some that's had like 20 different distinctive values that they put on. They chop a person up. And that's part of this intersectional feminism is part of, I guess you could put it underneath the umbrella of identity politics. Now, yesterday, not that I got into any trouble. I was trying to see how, I do things to see how people think. And one thing that, if you look at my YouTube channel, it says Christian Constitutional Warrior. And Dr. Christy Winters used that and said, well, you know, you identify yourself as that. That's an identifying factor. You know, yada yada yada. You are what you say you are. And I said, yeah, I can say I'm a Christian constitutional warrior. I have a specific definition for that. Now, if I have a definition for that, why I put that out there is I want to start a conversation to see what you think about that. What do you think that means? And all I got back on this website, these intellectuals, and it wasn't Dr. Christie that said this, it's some of the folks on, you know, that feed into the comment sections on these videos. It's not up to me to decide what that is. It's up to you to explain that. Well, wait a minute. And nobody disagreed with intersectional feminism on this comment section in this one video. I'm like, you, on one hand, you want to take an individual, look at them, and you want to divide them down into these arbitrary categories. A lot of these categories which they have no control over. I had no control over that I was born white, male, into a poor family, into a poor Catholic family actually, that I've had to work for everything in my life today. And it amazes me how they want to divide people up in these groups, especially over those subjective arbitrary traits. And so I couldn't get anybody to give me their definition of a Christian warrior. And I'm still on that I'm still not giving that, because, and this is where you run into the issues with identity politics. This is where you run into the issues of grouping everybody together, is because you want to define what they are. You look at a person and you don't see an individual. You don't see a sovereign individual that's sovereign over their own life, that can make life choices, good, bad, or indifferent. That can land them in different, you know, however you want to split up life, can land them in different situations that could be good or bad. And what they do with this, then they group all these people together. Well, they find all these people and they define them by this group. Like I said, I was going through their age and gender and occupation and immigration status, all this kind of stuff. And then they want to take and use the force of law or policy through the bureaucracy to try to correct perceived injustices or inequalities. Without even knowing if the individual, one, thinks that someone's being unjust to them or causing problems of inequality. So some folks out there just might think that, hey, this is life and this is what it is, and you know, we either let it crush us or we're victorious over it, one of the two. But these social justice tyrants out there, and they call themselves warriors, and I cannot bring myself to call them warriors because they're not. They're tyrants, and the reason why they're social justice tyrants is because they want to use the weight and force of government to bring about these changes of these so-called oppressions and inequalities and injustices. And I asked the question, did somebody, this one person in the feed, I asked the question, did you go out and ask all these people that you think are oppressed, no matter what group you've placed them in, and see if they are oppressed, and if they are, if they want you to do something about it? And he goes, well, the reply I got back was kind of roundabout. He said, well, abolition, getting rid of slavery, the emancipation of the slaves. Well, of course, you don't ask the oppressed because they have no voice in the matter. So we had to do that for them. And I'm thinking, but you disregard a whole history of slavery in the Caribbean islands when the slaves revolted for themselves and took freedom for themselves and corrected an injustice for themselves. Do you realize, folks, that over 600,000 Americans died? That's not including all the injured, but 600,000 Americans died during the Civil War. And that was a social justice tyranny solution to oppression, inequality, and injustices. Now, I'm not advocating for slavery. I think slavery goes against a lot of principles, including biblical principles, because people misunderstand what the Bible says about slavery, and I don't want to get into that. What I want to get into is the speech part of all these comments that were left on this feed here and all the attacks that were done on me. I have an informed opinion about things, and if I don't know something, I go research it. And when I research something, I try to look at it from both sides. Usually, when I'm researching something, I've already got one side of the story. I want to see what the other, whether it's something I agree with or not, I want to see what the other side is saying about this. So with this intersectional feminism, I went out and searched out other sources besides the ones on these feeds that I was actually reading. These are third wave, fourth wave feminists on these sites. A lot of men on these sites call themselves feminists, which that you know, I've been accused, I've been told, man, you need to get in touch with your inner woman. First off, I'm too busy being in touch with my inner child to get in touch with anything else. Second, I have no inner woman to get in touch with. That's why I married a woman. And my wife, when we sit down and talk about these things and she watches them on TV sometimes with me, she's like, what in the world are these women talking about? You know, honestly, my wife would rather, and I don't force her to do anything, my wife would rather stay home and take care of the house and do her crafts and stuff like that. And hopefully my goal is with the show here to actually build up the audience enough to start making an income enough to support the family so she doesn't have to work outside of the home if she doesn't want to. But some of these third wave feminists out there think because I'm a white male privileged person, I'm oppressing my wife by allowing her to do what she wants to do as far as taking care of the family and working in the house, which honestly, I think being a mother and a housewife is a tough job. It's a tough job, and it's a thankless job with our society. But the thing that I saw that came out of these comments in here were any dissenting ideas or opinions or observations. Because I'm not an expert in intersectional feminism. I'm not an expert in a lot of these things, but I can read things, I can watch videos, and I can observe and make my comments on these observations. Of course, I'm not allowed to do that either, according to some people. You can't just observe and come away with an opinion. And I'm like, but life's an observation, folks. Life is literally an observation. Whether you're learning from a book or you're learning from other people's examples or you're learning from your own mistakes or your own examples that you create in your life, it's an observation. And the idea, and this is where I'm going to bring this around real quick back to the college campuses and universities that have been hitting my, a lot of them yesterday and last night were being heavily discussed in the news feeds that I actually browse every now and then. It's this idea of guilt by association. Now, I had made mention, and I was wrong, and I apologize for it, that I thought that Dr. Winters was citing the study, the erroneous study of 1 in 5 men going to college are rapists, which that's been debunked so many times. She, as far as I could find in the videos anyway, I didn't go back to all her writings and do a Google search on her writings, but on the videos, and I'll give her this, no, she did not say that. However, in many of the videos, she said she supports intersectional feminism. A lot of feminists, third wave feminists that support intersectional feminism support this idea of this debunked study. Well, someone came back and just lambasted me with profanities and called me a liar, an idiot, and they weren't the only one. There were several people on there doing this, including Dr. Winters. You'd think a doctor would know better, but I digress. They said so they're guilty by association. And my comment back was, you don't understand what guilty by association means. And let me tell you this real quick here, because this is something that's coming up on college campuses all the time, especially Trump supporters. Okay? There's a lot of folks in the anti-freedom crowd, the old paradigm. If you haven't been here for a while, I hardly use the left-right paradigm anymore. It's either you're for freedom and liberty or you're against it. There's no in-between ground. And there are anti-freedom folks on the right and the left. That's why I went to this new paradigm, because I think it's more accurate, more descriptive of what's going on. Everybody in the anti-freedom crowd that I've been privy to, not everybody that's in it, but that's come into my purview, claims that Donald Trump's a white supremacist because white supremacists support him, and because of his comments about Charlottesville, which were innocuous at best. There was nothing in his comments about Charlottesville gave me the indication that he supported white supremacy. Matter of fact, the reason why they jump on him is because he talks about how there's bad actors on all sides in that situation, which there was. Matter of fact, there were some illegal actions because of Antifa and what they were planning on doing and what they actually did with beating people and stuff like that. There were some criminal actions on the Charlottesville's city council by allowing the same day the permits for an protest rally, or a protest rally against the white supremacists. And if they didn't know that this kind of drama would happen, then they are totally clueless and they're not fit for office to begin with. But people claim that Donald Trump is a white supremacist because white supremacists support him. That's like saying Ronald Reagan was gay because the log cabin Republicans, and go look that term up if you don't know what that is, because the log cabin Republicans supported him. Now, that type of guilt by association is wrong. However, what Dr. Christy Winters and one of her supporters that was trying to defend her, what that supporter got wrong was, if you willingly associate yourself with an ideology or a group that actually expresses something, then you are guilty by association because you willfully chose to be part of that organization. I chose to become a Christian. I chose to follow the biblical example of salvation. I chose that. I look in the scriptures, especially in Ephesians chapter 6, it talks about put on the full armor of God. And that's where I get the idea of being a Christian warrior. And the same idea I get with a constitutional warrior. And that's actually, I own the domain name for that, constitutionalwarrior.com. It's in my email, danc@constitutionalwarrior.com. And basically what it is I support the Constitution and the ideas that created the Constitution, limited government and freedom and liberty for the masses, for everybody. And on college campuses today, the same thing's happening. They're shutting down speech. I won't have time to play these videos today. We're going to play them tomorrow because I'm going to have a longer show tomorrow. If my interview with H.F. Buckley from New York Post doesn't go too long, and if it does, that's fine. I'll save them for another day. But in here, there was a student that says, by you shutting down this speech, you're taking away my right to freely assemble here and listen to what this person has to say. And he was shouted down by saying, we cannot debate racism. So arbitrarily, we have this one student that was shouting out, is the head kumbaya of all racism, and had dictated to this other student that since this was racist, without any discussion if it was or wasn't, we're not going to discuss it here. It has no place in university. And my only question to this guy that was shouting this other student down is, who died and left you, boss? Who left you the high mucky muck of free speech and what will or will not be discussed on college campuses? Now, one of the biggest reasons why I have an angst against this, and I'll end this and we'll get into some of the show here talking about this, after I do my morning stuff, the daily Bible reading, stuff like that, is there's only a handful probably, and I know of only one personally, Hillsdale College, that does not in any form take any government tax monies, whether it's subsidies from the federal government or whether the students get Pell Grants or any type of government backed student loans. They do not accept them at Hillsdale College. And like I said, I don't know if they're the only ones that do that. I'm told that there's other ones, but I don't know who they are. I'm just going to use Hillsdale example. At Hillsdale, if they want to disallow somebody to come on campus, they have the freedom to do so because they do not take any money from the federal government in any form. And so they are the captains of their own destiny. But every other college and university in the country, as far as I've been able to tell, takes in some form, some way in the past. Hillsdale never has. But in the past, in the present, and will in the future, whether it's direct subsidies or whether it's government-backed student loans or whether it's Pell Grants from the federal government, they take government money. And if they take that government money, they do not have a right. It's not like they're a private business. It's not like they're the NFL or they're private business. They can set the rules for protesting and free speech and stuff like that as far as if it's going to happen in this area. They do not have the right. The students do not. The supposed adult faculty do not have the right to squelch or stop speakers from coming to the campus. Again, on this feed yesterday, I was asked a couple loaded questions. I asked them to clarify. No clarification came whatsoever. You answer the question the way I put it forth. And I'm like, no, you clarify what you mean by modern day Hitler. Because they wanted to ask me, would you stop a modern day Hitler from coming to the podium? I said, first off, you define what you mean by modern day Hitler. And then I went down to say later on the comments down there about that. I said, if the German people had known ahead of time, before their guns were taken away and their rights were taken away, who Hitler actually was, if they were allowed to freely debate that in Germany, Hitler may have not come to power. And so free speech could have stopped a monster like Hitler. So do you want to stop that on college campuses today? And it is a loaded question, but I wanted her to define. I wanted to know what she thought, and that was Dr. Winters. I wanted to know how she defined that, and that's where I guess I really fall down on identity politics and intersectionalism and free speech. If I'm going to say something to you, I'm going to qualify what I'm saying. I'm going to explain to you what I'm saying. But if you look at me and just take a title, even though I use that title for myself, if you take that title and try to use it against me without knowing how I define it, and without having the courtesy to actually ask me, well, Dan, how do you actually define that term? Glad you asked. Let's sit down and talk about that. Then we don't have a dialogue. We have a tyranny. We have a tyranny of the crowd. So let me, I see a comment in here. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any, governance, it should be, governance of any other, by John Adams. And he's absolutely correct. And what we have here is we have group tyranny, whether it's in the form of identity politics, whether it's in the form of intersectional feminism, or whether it's in the form of cracking down on free speech on campuses. We have a mob tyranny going on in this country. And part of that, real quick, I know I keep going off in these tangents, but part of that is I don't know how many times I had to correct people that we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional representative republic, or just to shorten it up, we're a republic. And inevitably, invariably, without doubt, I get people come back and say, well, you realize that there are, a republic has democratic processes. And you almost want to say, well, no, duh. But that's not what you guys are saying when you call us a democracy. You're calling us a big D democracy, mob rule democracy. That's not what we are. And if that's the only argument you have, you need to go back to school. Because you just been schooled. Okay. Hey, folks, If you like what you hear on the show and you want to help support the show, go to thedanclemenshow.com and click on the gearxs.com widget. This is one of these stores that if they don't have it, it can't be got. From clothing to camping gear to hiking gear to swimming gear, you name it, they got it, and they got it at really steeply discounted prices. And I'm told by some of the reviews in there and some of the interaction I've had that these products are very, very good. So if you like what you hear on the Dan Clemens Show and you want to help support me and my family in the show, please go over to thedanclemenshow.com and support my affiliate marketers like gearxs.com. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verses 11 through 14. The mouth of the righteous is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Oh, how prophetic that one verse is there, folks. Verse 12, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins. Wisdom is found in the lips of him who has understanding, but a rod is for the back of him who is devoid of understanding. Wise people store up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. And folks, in my dealings with many of the folks in the anti-freedom crowd, and these are random verses I pick up out of my email. I don't go through and cherry pick these. I just, as they come through, the only cherry picking I do is some that should be more for Bible study instead of just a short Bible verse reading on a show like this. So I thought this was very applicable to what I've been going through. That the mouth of the righteous is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. How we see that in our society today, especially when it comes to points of view that people may not agree with. I would never. I don't care how racist a person is or how white supremacist they are or how anti-freedom of folks, a communist or socialist or I would never stop their free speech because you know why? We get that out in the public square, it can be debated. And wisdom is found on the lips of him who has understanding. And the only way we're going to have understanding is if we sit down and reason things out with one another. And that's why I love the book of Isaiah in the first chapter where God told Isaiah that he longs to sit down and reason with us. God Almighty, the creator of the heavens and the earth, wants to sit down and reason with Dan. I'm awestruck. I am awestruck that God thinks that much of individuals that he wants to sit down and reason with us. Today's quote mail comes from Morris Venden. Let's not drag God's standard of truth down to our level of performance. Amen. And today's short Bible lesson comes from Wes McAdams over at radicallychristian.com. He posted this back on March 18th in 2015. One reason you are bored with the Bible. It has a lot to do with what you feed your mind with between Bible studies and reading the Bible. Has a lot to do with that. So go over to thedanclemenshow.com and click on that and you'll be able to read that. Okay. I don't have enough time to show this whole video in its entirety today, but I have a video and the link's going to be up in the show notes page. Are universities killing free speech? And this is by filmmaker Rob Montz. And he went back to his alma mater, Brown University, to find out if universities are killing free speech. And this video, folks, is a Facebook video. It's on fee.org site, on their Facebook site. It's fantastic. It really lays bare this issue of free speech on college campuses. And really, to me, it was an eye-opener. And it's not just the students that don't understand free speech. There are faculty members that are, and this isn't just unique to Brown University. This is happening all over college campuses and universities throughout the country, throughout the world. That we have these professors, instead of sparking a debate to see whether this idea holds up or that idea holds up, they are indoctrinating the students with ideologies. And one of the most dangerous ideologies that students are being taught, and they're being taught this in high school, their parents aren't correcting them. Their parents are actually supporting this disastrous policy, this disastrous ideology that if you hear something you don't agree with, don't let it be spoken. don't let it be spoken. If you disagree with it and you think it's bad, don't let it be spoken. Organize other students. Stand there in an audience and actually read from a script to shout down somebody you disagree with. And quite frankly, folks, these are the ones you're going to find out in the world after they graduate college that do not know how to cope with real life, because real life isn't that way. I can't go out and interact with other human beings and not be offended by what somebody says. That's life. That's life in the big city, boys and girls. And this is the thing that we have to remember. That colleges and universities are there to teach, not to indoctrinate. They're there to challenge presuppositions. They're there to challenge ideologies. They're there to challenge long-held beliefs. And if you can't challenge them because someone's offended by the topic, if the university isn't going to shut it down, we're going to do it for you. And students are proud about this. Those same students, I'd love to see those students in life after college and show them what they said in these videos and see how their life is turning out after college, see how they're coping. I think that would be, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube and individuals on YouTube you can probably track down and do this type of study with. It would be interesting to see that study. It really would. And I'm careful about calling folks names because of identity politics, but these folks that act like snowflakes, that melt at the first sign of controversy, is just ridiculous, folks. And the adults in the room, are the ones that aren't carrying out their responsibility as far as making sure that free speech is happening on college campuses. I have this dailysignal.com story here from Joshua Israel, posted October 13th of this year. It's watch what happened at University of Michigan when Charles Murray spoke. When Libertarian Speaker Charles Murray came to speak at the University of Michigan Wednesday, not everyone was pleased. Prior to his arrival, serious threats were issued to college Republicans to intimidate them. Now, and this is a tactic of the anti-freedom folks out there, that instead of allowing free speech, they intimidate to shut down civil public discourse. And quite honestly, the protections that are found in the First Amendment with free speech are not only to protect individuals from government intrusion on your rights, it is also a protection from one individual to another. So before we get too much further into this, these folks that were intimidating these Republicans and were issuing threats on the college, they need to be tracked down and they need to be charged with felony offenses, because these are felony offenses. Intimidation and threats are felony offenses, and they need to be charged and prosecuted underneath that. And if that destroys their academic career, they only have themselves and their parents and their other peers to blame for it. I'm not saying that we need to prosecute somebody that was saying something out of turn. That's not what I'm saying. There were actual serious threats issued to the college Republicans to intimidate them. The alumni wrote in the Michigan Daily that Murray was an alt-right bigot who, emboldened by President Trump, and ended that the event must be canceled or shut down. Even before the event, college Republicans received threats demanding that we rescind Dr. Murray's invitation, but in the end we decided to push through because we refused to let intimidation and aggression champion over free speech and respectful conversation. Enrique Zalamia, president of University of Michigan College Republicans, told the Daily Signal. Murray, who is currently at conservative think tank, the American Enterprise Institute, is the author of books The Bell Curve, Intelligence and Class Structure in American Life, which I actually own a copy of that, folks. I haven't tried to read through yet, but it's huge. And Coming Apart, the State of White America, 1960 to 2010. When Murray spoke at Middlebury College in Vermont this March, protesters were so violent that a professor's neck was injured, and she went to the hospital for treatment. Americans need an alternative to the I keep reading advertising. I wish they'd quit doing that on my reading page. Okay. Upon Murray's arrival, left-wing activists stormed the stage, claiming that Murray was alt-right. They did their best to shut him down. Murray calmly spoke with a professor representative until the hecklers left the room. At one point, someone said, "Someone stop this blankety-blank person from speaking." At another moment, some chanted at Murray, "Charles Murray, go away, sexist, racist, KKK." You can hear that at the 5:35 mark in the video below. There's a video that goes with this. I do have it, but I don't have it downloaded, but I do have it here. We're not going to show it because there is some foul language in it. I was personally ashamed to see such pitiful and disrespectful behavior from people who call themselves scholars, academics, and students of the University of Michigan. As a staunch advocate for free speech, I was incredibly disheartened to see the same people who call for equality now commandeering the spotlight only to promote their own one-sided agenda, said Zalamia. They would ask great questions, but when the time come to listen to the answers from the other side, they pulled out newspapers, set off phone alarms, and flat out booed. And when I approached protesters individually, they talked over my answers, asking me different questions. Instead, he added. Writing for the New York Times, Jesse Arm, a senior at the University of Michigan, described how Murray's speech went. At one point during the chaotic hour, a university spokesman, Rick Fitzgerald, took to the stage. He called on the protesters to stop shutting down the speaker or further measures would be taken. The boorish behavior continued. Further measures were never taken. Now, folks, let me stop the reading here. If you threaten an impetulant child with consequences, you need to carry through with those consequences of those impetulant children. And these are, I don't even call them young adults anymore that behave like this. They are child adults. And so we don't even really have adults. If I'm making a threat, if I'm going to threaten somebody with some type of action or consequence, I carry through on it. If my son stepped out of line when he was at home and I said, look, you do that one more time, this is what's going to happen, and he did it one more time, that's exactly what happened. But it didn't happen at the University of Michigan. At several points during the inaudible lecture, protesters turned off the lights and displayed a projection with the words white supremacists on the wall with an arrow pointing down to Mr. Murray. Others held signs, we punch white supremacists and Nazis go away. Over a dozen University of Michigan police officers stood by. No one was removed from the event. Zalamia also said while the college Republicans at the University of Michigan had no intention to promote racism and bigotry on campus, we were shocked to see students devolve what was meant to be a productive conversation about Charles Murray's book Coming Apart into a one-sided protest about the controversial topics of the bell curve, which was explicitly denounced prior to the event. Personally, I believe the true learning comes from respectful discourse between those who disagree. But what we saw here tonight was far from that. What I saw was a group of leftist protesters who wanted nothing more than to blow off some steam in a classic mob mentality fashion rather than actually listening and creating a positive, productive forum for debate. I'm instantly reminded of all the diversity and inclusivity seminars I've taken during the past 4 years at this university. We talk so much about including all people, but when it comes down to representing controversial topics, we disregard the fact that those too are worth listening to. As a crowd of protesters dispersed tonight, one girl yelled, where's your diversity now? As I scanned the room to see anxious college Republican members, I answered to myself, it's been here all along, but as usual, you were too loud to hear it. And folks, this is the sad state of our colleges and universities today. They will not allow different or differing opinions or ideas to flourish. They don't. Most of the time, and I run into this all the time on comment sections and forums and chat rooms that I go into from time to time, especially on the comment sections of videos, if, and this is a huge if, they actually allow, like on YouTube videos, you can turn off the comment section if you want. Far too often, in doing some research on different topics like, these hot button topics like identity politics and feminism and free speech on college campuses and stuff, I come across they're supposed to be open-minded folks, but yet they turn their comments off, they turn their likes and dislikes off. Almost every video that I've looked at that supports intersectional feminism or third-wave feminism or male feminism, not all of them, but a lot of the ones I've researched do not have the comments. Well, no, they do have comments on, but they do not have the like or dislike button enabled, as far as seeing the totals of them. To me, that's cowardly. Now, I've been warned about this, and I'm taking the warnings seriously. But I do not hide behind an avatar. I do not hide behind a moniker. My show is the Dan Clements Show. I am the host. My name's Dan Clements. Not that hard to find. I'm not putting my family at risk. If you look on the map and see where I live, you may want to back off because of the area I live in. I'm just saying, I'm not threatening anybody. But too many people out there live behind these avatars and these monikers, and you don't know who they are. And it's almost like a hit and run with comments. They hit you with these comments and they run, and some of them reply to you. A lot of times they don't even make an attempt to reply to questions that happen to be in your comments. They see something they disagree with, they won't read the rest of your comment, and they just try to explain to you what you meant by what you said when you put that down there, and that you shouldn't have this platform to actually say the things you're saying. So again, it's called freedom of speech. If you're going to put a video out there on YouTube, or I'm in the chat room, and again, I have one of the followers, Lion003, is in there, and he's, he said it was awesome when I said, we're going to talk about free speech today. And I don't know what he was expecting, but hopefully he's enjoying what we've been talking about so far. Now, again, we have another, and like I said, there's no adults at these universities and these colleges anymore that are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. None. Now, I have this article here from Reason.com. Montana dean worried the risk of offending students disinvites conservative speakers. Now, this was put out on October 18th also by Robbie Soave. Adams, a conservative writer and professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, was invited to give a lecture at the University of Montana, but the dean of Montana's journalism school has allegedly rescinded his invitation because he was worried about running the risk of offending students. Oh my! Can't offend the students. Can't bring them opposing views because you might offend somebody. It amazes me. Honestly, folks, it amazes me how many of these college students and university students can even gather themselves up enough to even go to classes, let alone go to a lectureship that might have something in it that they might disagree with and may not want to hear. According to email from the journalism dean, Larry Abramson, to Maria Cole, who arranged for Adams to speak as part of the annual Jeff Cole Memorial Scholarship programming each year, Adams appeared to be siding with Christians in the culture war and talking about the prevalence of cultural Marxism. Woo-hoo! That is a good subject to talk about, especially when it comes to colleges and universities, because that's exactly, folks, I'll stop the reading here, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about cultural Marxism. Whether you're talking about intersectional feminism, identity politics, or this free speech issue on colleges and universities, Marxism will not countenance opposing views. None. And we have the last century, there's some 250 million people that have been killed by cultural Marxism that would agree with that statement. Okay? I think we can find a speaker who will talk about free speech issues without running the risk of offending students, Abramson wrote in the email published by the News Talk KGVO in Missoula. We can still have a conversation with him if you want, but he is pretty extreme in his views. And again, how do you know he's pretty extreme in his views until you air those views out in front of those students? You may have an opinion about that, but let him defend that. And this is one of the problems with cultural Marxism. This is one of the problems with these identity group ideologies in politics like intersectionalism. It's group think. And they want to use the force of government and bureaucratic policy to force solutions on people that may not want your solutions to begin with. Ugh. Abramson subsequently defended himself to KGVO when KVGO News asked Mr. Abramson about refusing the Mike Abrams speech. Abramson said his chief concern was that Mr. Adams is not a journalist. He followed up by saying Adams has attacked members of the LGBTQ community in public forums, and in my view, belittled people who characterize themselves or that he would characterize as feminists. And I think that some of these remarks could be interpreted as hate speech. Again, I'm going to stop the reading here. This thing about hate speech has gotten totally out of hand. That is such a subjective term, and my friends over on some of the videos I've been commenting on would disagree with that. It can be quantified. How can you quantify something that is so subjective? What is hate speech to you may be just a differing opinion to me. That's subjective, folks. These intellectual elites out there that have no clue in life. Abramson said he doesn't believe there is a legal requirement to bring Mr. Adams to campus and indicated that Mr. Adams' values were not aligned with the journalist school. Now, let me stop the reading there again. If you take federal government tax money in the form of subsidies or Pell Grants or federal-backed student loans, you should be required to allow this. You're not a private institution. Taxpayers are paying the bill, or at least part of it. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure our lawyers will tell you that there are requirements that we accommodate different people's views. But the J School does not have to invite people that we think don't match our priorities or our values as tolerant, welcoming school, Abramson said. In other words, Abramson wants his journalistic school to be an echo chamber. And that's it. Journalism should never be about being in an echo chamber. Too many times, I've been negligent and telling you about Project Veritas and American Pravda. I think they have the 4th or 5th video out about the New York Times. These people don't care about journalistic integrity. They don't care about unbiased reporting. They don't. And if this is what the colleges and universities are teaching, then they'll be welcome at the New York Times. But if someday, if I ever get, one of my plans is I'd like to start up my own news service online, I would never hire somebody from a school like that. Sorry. You don't qualify to be a journalist, in my opinion. I reached out to Abramson to comment. He did not immediately respond. The dean is correct. The university is not compelled to extend a platform to any specific speaker. Moreover, administrators could find someone to defend the principles of free speech who does not hold bigoted views towards members of the LGBT community. That said, if your goal is to avoid running the risk of offending students, you have set a very high bar for any intellectual not of the left to speak on campus. Recall that students at William and Mary recently shut down the American Civil Liberties Union with cries of liberalism is white supremacy. Just a few days ago, it was reported that a Mississippi school district was pulling To Kill a Mockingbird from the library shelves because the book makes people uncomfortable. That's a fantastic Gregory Peck movie on top of that, folks. Every time school officials come to pressure, cave to pressure from students, or as it seems to be in the case of Montana, proactively move to prevent emotional harm before students even have the chance to complain, they help normalize the idea that learning should be completely free of intellectual discomfort. If nothing else, the cover schools in bubble wrap approach seems to be sabotaging chances of students developing resiliency. A recent New York Times piece found skyrocketing rates of depression and anxiety among people who are growing up under hyperprotective conditions. By constantly weighing whether a speaker, book, event, idea, rally, sign, or outburst will negatively impact students' emotional well-being, we are doing them no favors. And again, this idea of, what was he saying here? About these students growing up in these hyperprotective conditions. Why are we worrying about intellectual discomfort of these kids? If they didn't get that at home growing up, shame on their parents. I mean, shame on them. If they didn't get that growing up in their schools, then shame on those schools. If their schools didn't challenge them intellectually and make them a little uncomfortable, what generation are we raising here? What kind of a generation are we raising here? Are we raising snowflakes? Are we actually doing America and the American culture any favors by allowing this activity to go unchallenged? Real quick here at the Dan Clement Show, we don't shy away from controversy. We don't shy away from controversial speakers who may come on this show if they ever accept my invitations. We have a good tomorrow. Real quick here, we're getting down to the end of the show. Tomorrow, we'll have H.F. Buckley from the New York Post on here talking about an article that he had written and that one of his assistants found out I actually talked about on my show, and it's great. Okay, we're going to have him about 20 after the hour tomorrow. So I look forward to having him here. Hopefully you look forward to listening to him. We're going to talk about that article and maybe some other ideas that he has from some of his other articles. I'm going to ask him some other questions about economics and governance and get his opinion on something that I've been working on the danclementshow.com. So again, we need to allow free speech on college campuses and universities, because if we don't, we're going to have a group of people that are living in their own echo chamber that don't know how to debate, don't know how to argue, don't know how to deal with a dissenting opinion from theirs. This has been the Dan Clement Show. I'm your host, Dan Clement, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow at noon.